Imagine waking up one day to realize that nothing you do truly matters. No grand purpose, no cosmic plan, just existence, moment to moment. Would that be freeing, or would it crush you? Albert Camus, the philosopher of the absurd, dared to ask, can we find happiness in a meaningless universe? And if so, how? In this video, we'll explore the profound insights of Camus and uncover whether happiness can exist without meaning, or if meaning itself is just another illusion. Imagine waking up one morning to a world that makes no sense. No divine plan, no grand purpose, just the quiet emptiness of the universe stretching out in front of you. The question then becomes, how do you move forward when everything feels like a pointless, transient moment? This is the heart of Albert Camus' philosophy of the absurd. He called it absurdity, the clash between humanity's innate desire for meaning and the universe's refusal to provide any. In his eyes, life has no inherent meaning, and yet we cannot help but search for one. We want answers, purpose, and direction, but the universe gives us none. This tension, this existential crisis, is what Camus calls the absurd. It's not a random philosophical idea. It's something we all experience in our lives, whether we acknowledge it or not. It's that moment when you realize that no matter how hard you try, the universe doesn't care. So, how do we cope with this realization? How do we go on when everything seems like an endless loop of meaningless tasks? Camus argues that most people try to escape the absurd by finding or creating meaning, by holding on to religious beliefs or philosophical systems that promise answers. But Camus sees this as an illusion. The search for meaning, he suggests, is an act of defiance against the absurd, but it's also a form of self-deception. The more we try to impose meaning onto the world, the more we distance ourselves from the truth of the absurd. Yet, this recognition of absurdity is not something to fear, according to Camus. It's something to embrace. The absurd is not the end of life, it's the beginning of true freedom. Once we accept that the world offers no grand purpose, we can stop chasing it and instead focus on what we can control, our own experience. In his essay, The Myth of Sisyphus, Camus uses the story of a man condemned to endlessly roll a boulder up a mountain, only to watch it roll back down, to explore this idea of absurd rebellion. Sisyphus, despite his eternal punishment, refuses to give in to despair. He finds meaning, not by searching for it, but by accepting his task and confronting it head-on. Camus imagines that in the moment when Sisyphus accepts his fate, when he truly understands the futility of his task, he achieves a sense of freedom. Sisyphus, in that moment of full awareness, is liberated. He no longer yearns for a different life, for some higher meaning. The boulder becomes an instrument of his rebellion, a symbol of his defiance against the universe's indifference. His task becomes meaningful in its absurdity, and Camus argues that we too can find freedom in this defiance. Happiness, Camus suggests, is not about finding purpose in the universe, but about creating meaning in the face of its absence. This perspective challenges our conventional thinking. We live in a world that's obsessed with finding answers, with having a clear purpose or meaning behind everything we do. We're conditioned to believe that we need to follow a path, to have a reason for every step we take. We're taught that success means aligning with some larger plan or divine order, whether that's through religion, career, or social expectations. But what if none of that matters? What if the search for purpose is itself a distraction, keeping us from fully embracing the reality of our existence? Camus doesn't suggest we stop living, but rather that we stop clinging to a false sense of meaning. By recognizing that life is inherently absurd, we gain the power to live freely, without the burden of searching for an ultimate truth. Sisyphus is not an isolated figure in Camus' philosophy. He represents each of us, struggling to find meaning in a world that offers none. The absurd hero is one who confronts the meaningless of life head-on, without resorting to illusions or distractions. But this confrontation is not a passive acceptance of despair. Camus believes that it's in the very act of rebellion against the absurd that we can find our freedom. This rebellion is not about fighting the universe or trying to change it. It's about refusing to submit to it. It's about living with the awareness that life has no inherent meaning, but still choosing to live fully, to experience everything without needing it to be something more than it is. By embracing the absurd, we don't give up on life. We give life to the absurd. At first glance, the absurd might seem like a curse. After all, if there's no meaning, why bother with anything? But Camus challenges us to think differently. The absence of meaning frees us from the tyranny of purpose, from the pressure to live for something beyond the present moment. Once we stop chasing the elusive goal of meaning, we can start truly living. For Camus, happiness is not found in understanding the world or finding a higher purpose. It's found in the acceptance of the absurd, in living with passion, awareness, and a deep understanding of the fleeting nature of life. The absurd hero is not someone who waits for meaning to arrive, but someone who creates their own meaning through their actions and choices. In this sense, the absurd becomes not a burden, but a liberating force. The realization that life is meaningless is not a source of despair, but of possibility. By letting go of the need for meaning, we open ourselves up to a more authentic experience of life. This acceptance of the absurd is not a passive resignation. It's an active choice to live in the face of meaninglessness. It's about making the most of the moments we have, finding joy in the fleeting, impermanent nature of existence. And in that choice, Camus argues, we can find true happiness, not by seeking meaning, but by embracing life as it is, absurd and beautiful in its chaos. Sisyphus, then, becomes a symbol of how we, too, can face the absurdity of life and still find joy. When we stop searching for something more, when we let go of the need to understand or explain everything, we find that life itself can be enough. It's in the struggle, the very act of confronting the absurd, that we create our own meaning. And in that struggle, we discover a deeper form of happiness, one that's not based on what we achieve, but on the simple act of living fully, without illusions. The absurd hero is free because they are no longer bound by the need for meaning. They are free to live, to love, to create, to experience life in all its fullness, without the burden of searching for a reason why. Through Camus' eyes, we see that true freedom doesn't come from understanding the meaning of life. It comes from accepting that life has no meaning and choosing to live anyway. This radical acceptance, this rebellion against the absurd, is the heart of Camus' philosophy. And it's in this rebellion that we find the possibility of happiness. Happiness, then, is not something that comes after finding meaning. It's something we create in the very act of confronting the meaninglessness of the world. In the absurd, we find not despair, but freedom. And in that freedom, we find the possibility for a deeper, more authentic happiness. What makes this philosophy so powerful is that it doesn't shy away from the harshness of life. It doesn't try to sugarcoat the fact that the universe is indifferent to our suffering or our joy. Instead, it invites us to confront that indifference directly, to face it without fear. And in that confrontation, we find not only our freedom, but our happiness. Throughout history, humanity has sought meaning in a variety of ways. From religion to ideology, from morality to the pursuit of wealth, we've attempted to fill the void left by the absence of a higher purpose. Yet for Albert Camus, this search for meaning is not only futile, but a form of self-deception. The traditional comforts of religion, societal expectations, and even modern ideologies are just distractions, attempts to avoid confronting the true nature of existence. Camus argues that these pursuits can trap us in an illusion, a false sense of purpose that shields us from the existential reality of life's absurdity. But what exactly is this trap, and why does it keep so many of us imprisoned? The first trap is religion. For centuries, humans have looked to religion as a way to make sense of the world, to explain suffering, and to promise some form of cosmic justice. At its best, religion provides a comforting framework. in which people can find hope and solace. But for Camus, the promise of an afterlife or divine intervention is an escape from the harsh truth of the absurd. When we turn to religion, we attempt to make sense of the meaningless universe by introducing an illusion of meaning, an eternal reward for our earthly suffering, or a divine order behind the chaos. But in doing so, we deny the fundamental truth of the absurd, that life has no inherent meaning and no higher power is guiding us. To embrace religion is, in a sense, to hide from reality, to retreat into a comforting fantasy that distracts us from confronting the void. This does not mean that Camus dismisses religion entirely. Instead, he urges us to recognize its limitations and the dangers of relying on it as a crutch. By holding on to religious beliefs as a way to avoid the absurd, we deny ourselves the freedom that comes with acknowledging life's inherent meaninglessness. The existentialists, Camus included, argue that the true path to freedom lies in accepting the absurd, not in seeking solace in a higher power. And while religion may provide a sense of community or moral guidance, it ultimately keeps us from facing the essential challenge of existence, accepting the absurd and finding meaning within it. Beyond religion, there are also societal expectations and norms that function as another form of the trap. Society imposes values and structures on us, telling us how to live, what to desire, and what we should consider important. From the pressure to succeed in our careers to the expectations placed on our relationships, society often insists on rigid definitions of success and happiness. These social pressures are rooted in the idea that there is a right way to live, a life that aligns with the greater good or with some universal ideal of fulfillment. But this too is a form of illusion, according to Camus. Society's values are not universal truths. They are human constructions shaped by cultural and historical forces. What society tells us is good or successful may not reflect our individual desires, aspirations, or the truth of our existence. To live according to these external standards is to live for others, not for oneself. The societal trap is one that many people fall into without even realizing it. We're taught from an early age to conform, to chase after the markers of success, prestige, wealth, status. These external goals are often pursued without questioning their true value or relevance to our personal experience. We might find ourselves working tirelessly for a promotion or a lifestyle that we think will bring us happiness, only to realize that achieving these goals doesn't fill the emptiness we feel inside. The pursuit of social approval, the desire to be seen as successful or virtuous, can drive us away from the only true source of meaning we can control, ourselves. Camus' challenge is to break free from these illusions, to stop chasing after a meaning imposed from the outside and instead look inward, to recognize that meaning must come from within. This is where the real freedom lies, when we stop searching for something beyond ourselves to give our lives purpose, and instead begin to create meaning within the confines of our own experience. By rejecting the comfort of external sources of meaning, we reclaim ownership over our own lives. We are no longer slaves to societal expectations or religious dogma. We are free to define our own values and live authentically. The most insidious of these traps, however, is the ideological trap. Throughout history, people have turned to ideologies, political movements, social justice causes, or philosophical systems as a way to understand the world and make sense of their place in it. Ideologies promise a framework for understanding the complexities of life, providing a sense of clarity and direction. But like religion and societal norms, ideologies also rely on illusions of meaning. They offer the comfort of belonging to something greater than ourselves, something that provides structure and purpose. In their most extreme forms, ideologies can lead to fanaticism, as people become convinced that their cause is the only one that matters, that they alone possess the truth. Camus was deeply wary of ideological systems, as they can lead to a dangerous form of totalitarianism, both externally in the form of oppressive regimes and internally in the way we close ourselves off to alternative perspectives. When we become too attached to an ideology, we stop thinking critically, and we risk losing sight of the absurdity of life. We begin to view the world through a narrow lens, where everything is judged based on its alignment with our beliefs. In doing so, we miss the richness of the human experience, the beauty, complexity, and contradictions that come with living in an absurd world. Ideologies, for Camus, are yet another way of avoiding the absurd. They promise certainty, but in doing so, they deny the essential complexity and uncertainty of existence. So what's the answer? How do we escape the trap of traditional meaning? Camus's solution is radical. We must embrace the absurd fully and live with the understanding that there is no ultimate meaning, no higher purpose, no final answer to the questions that haunt us. But this is not a prescription for despair. On the contrary, it's an invitation to freedom. By rejecting the false comfort of religion, societal expectations, and ideology, we free ourselves to live authentically, to experience life on our own terms. We can begin to find meaning not in the search for something beyond ourselves, but in the act of living itself. This idea might sound frightening at first. After all, if there is no higher meaning, how can we ever find fulfillment? But Camus offers a profound answer. We create meaning through our actions, our relationships, our choices. Life may not have an inherent purpose, but that doesn't mean we are powerless. The absence of a higher meaning frees us from the pressure to conform to a predefined narrative. We are free to live as we choose, to find joy and purpose in the small, fleeting moments of our existence. Instead of relying on external sources of meaning, we can begin to live according to our own values, creating a life that is meaningful in its own right. In this sense, the search for meaning is not an external quest, but an internal one. It's not about seeking approval or validation from society, religion, or ideology. It's about living authentically, about finding joy and fulfillment in the act of living itself. When we embrace the absurd, we stop searching for something that isn't there, and instead, we make the most of the life we have. By rejecting the traps that society, religion, and ideology set for us, we open ourselves to the true freedom of living in the moment, no longer burdened by the need to find meaning, but free to create it. And in this freedom, we find the possibility of a deeper, more genuine happiness than we ever could have imagined. If life has no grand, overarching purpose, then what's the point of it all? Can happiness truly exist without a higher meaning guiding our actions? These questions form the core of Camus' philosophy, and while he acknowledges the difficulty of living without purpose, he also offers a liberating answer. Happiness, according to Camus, does not arise from some external source of meaning. Instead, it is found in the simple act of living fully, experiencing life in all its richness, without the burden of seeking something more. To live without meaning is not to live in despair, but to embrace the present moment in its raw, unadulterated form. The key to this kind of happiness is found in fully immersing ourselves in the world around us, not by striving for distant, abstract goals, but by savoring the experiences that life offers in the here and now. Camus argues that to accept the absurd is to free ourselves from the oppressive weight of existential searching. When we stop looking for answers, when we let go of the need to impose meaning onto the world, we open ourselves up to a deeper kind of satisfaction. This shift is profound because it turns the focus from the external, from trying to meet the expectations of others or achieve some distant ideal, to the internal experience of being alive. It is in the act of living authentically, without pretense, without the need for external validation, that true fulfillment is found. The experience itself becomes the meaning. We are not living to achieve something greater, we are living simply to live fully and wholeheartedly. This concept of happiness is radically different from the conventional view that happiness comes from achieving something, whether it's a goal, a milestone, or a sense of purpose. In modern society, we are conditioned to think that happiness is something that can be earned, something that happens once we reach a certain place in life, whether that's financial success, social recognition, or personal fulfillment. But Camus dismantles this idea. He suggests that the pursuit of these external goals is not the key to happiness. Rather, happiness arises in the act of embracing life as it is, without the pressure of needing it to be something more. This means finding joy not in the destination, but in the journey itself, in the moments of joy, love, and passion that are available to us in the present. To live fully in the face of the absurd is to choose life not because it has meaning, but because it's ours to experience. The beauty of life lies not in its purpose, but in its fleeting, fragile nature. When we come to terms with the fact that life is brief and ultimately meaningless, we are invited to live it more fully. We realize that each moment, no matter how small, is an opportunity to experience something valuable. It's in the simple things, a shared laugh with a friend, the joy of a good meal, the thrill of a walk in nature, that happiness can be found. These are the experiences that make life worth living, even if they are not connected to some grander plan. Camus urges us to engage with life passionately, to throw ourselves into the world with intensity, but without the need to cling to it or demand more from it. This is where his philosophy differs from nihilism. While nihilism might suggest that life is pointless and therefore not worth living, Camus argues that we should embrace life precisely because it is pointless. The lack of meaning does not diminish life. In fact, it enhances it. The absence of a higher purpose frees us from the tyranny of expectation and allows us to live fully without the weight of constantly searching for something beyond what is immediately in front of us. But how do we live fully without some ultimate goal or meaning? For Camus, the answer lies in recognizing that the act of living itself is what gives life its value. To live is to engage with the world, not to search for answers or to attempt to fit life into a preordained mold, but to appreciate the experiences that come our way. The absurd hero does not seek a grand purpose, but instead embraces the absurdity of life with open arms, accepting its contradictions and challenges. By embracing life's transience, we are free to experience it in all its fullness, without the need for it to be anything more than what it is. This acceptance of the absurd is not passive resignation. It is an active choice to live with awareness and engagement. It requires a deep acceptance of the world as it is, without the need to change it or to search for hidden meaning. Camus encourages us to take responsibility for our own happiness, to stop waiting for some external force to give us purpose or fulfillment. Happiness is not something that is given to us by the universe or by other people. It is something that we create through our relationship with the world around us. To live without a higher purpose means that we can find meaning in everything, no matter how small or fleeting. We no longer need to measure the worth of our experiences based on some external standard or future outcome. Each moment becomes an opportunity for engagement, for joy, for connection. By letting go of the need for meaning, we are free to live with greater authenticity and spontaneity. We are free to embrace the present, to be fully immersed in life as it unfolds, without the weight of constantly searching for something more. It's important to recognize that living without meaning does not mean living without direction or passion. Camus is not advocating for a life of aimlessness or indifference. On the contrary, he believes that we can live with great intensity and purpose, just not in the traditional sense. We are free to pursue our passions, to love deeply, to create, to experience the world with wonder. But we do so without the need to attach these experiences to some larger goal or purpose. The experience itself becomes the meaning. This perspective can be liberating. When we stop searching for some ultimate purpose, we are no longer bound by the expectations and limitations of traditional narratives. We are free to chart our own course, to live according to our own values, and to find meaning in our relationships, our work, and our passions. The absence of a higher purpose does not strip life of its richness. Rather, it makes the richness of life all the more apparent. Without the pressure of living for something more, we can appreciate the beauty of the small, ordinary moments that make up our existence. By embracing life's absurdity, we are able to live more fully, more authentically. The absurd does not make life less valuable. It makes it more precious because it reminds us that life is fleeting and that we must savor each moment. In the end, Camus' message is clear. Happiness is not found in some distant future, nor in the pursuit of an ultimate purpose. Happiness is found in the act of living fully in the present, in embracing life as it is, absurd, beautiful, and fleeting. We don't need to search for meaning because the meaning is already here, in the experience of life itself. When we accept the absurd, we free ourselves to live fully, without hesitation or regret. In this freedom, we find the happiness that we have been seeking all along. The real power of Camus' philosophy lies in its practicality. While many thinkers and philosophers grapple with the meaning of life and the existence of purpose, Camus doesn't just offer a theoretical framework. He gives us a call to action. The absurd, for Camus, is not an intellectual concept to be pondered from the comfort of an armchair. It is a lived reality, one that demands that we confront the fundamental truths of our existence and engage with the world as it is, without the comforting illusions of higher purpose or external validation. This confrontation with the absurd is not just a philosophical exercise, but an invitation to live authentically and fully. To truly embrace the absurd is to live in a way that is not constrained by the search for meaning, but rather is liberated by the acceptance of meaning's absence. The key to this liberation is the idea of revolt. Revolt, in Camus' terms, is not a violent or rebellious act in the traditional sense, but a profound personal stance against the absurdity of life. It is the decision to live fully and passionately despite the realization that there is no greater meaning to existence. Revolt is a way of asserting our freedom in the face of life's inherent meaninglessness. It is a refusal to be defeated by the absurd. This is an active stance, an ongoing refusal to submit to despair, a commitment to live with intensity and engagement, regardless of the lack of ultimate answers or cosmic justice. Revolt is what allows us to find joy and meaning in a world that seems indifferent or even hostile to human existence. It is not about creating an artificial purpose or seeking solace in religious or ideological frameworks, but about embracing the world on our own terms. Revolt means acknowledging that the universe will not offer us the answers we seek, and yet still choosing to live fully, to engage deeply with the world and those around us. This is where Camus' philosophy begins to shift from a bleak understanding of the absurd to a more hopeful, even radical affirmation of life itself. The process of revolt is not about surrendering to hopelessness or resignation. Instead, it is a courageous act of defiance. Camus teaches us that to rebel against the absurd is to embrace life in all of its complexities and contradictions. It is to recognize that suffering, pain, and loss are an inseparable part of the human condition, but that they do not have to define us or our experience of life. Revolt is an expression of defiance in the face of suffering, a commitment to continue living despite the hardships we face. It is an ongoing battle to remain engaged with the world, to maintain a sense of passion, curiosity, and connection, even when life offers no guarantees of meaning or fairness. Through revolt, we reclaim our agency. We recognize that we cannot control the circumstances of our existence or the challenges that life throws our way, but we can control how we respond to those challenges. We can choose to embrace life with open arms, to savor the small moments of beauty, love, and joy that exist within it. We can choose to love others, to create art, to experience the world with wonder and curiosity, without the need for an ultimate purpose to justify our actions. Revolt is not just an intellectual decision, it is a way of being in the world, actively choosing to live with intensity, to seek out the moments that make life worth living, and to find fulfillment in the very act of existence itself. One of the most profound aspects of Camus' philosophy of revolt is that it rejects the binary of success and failure, or meaning and meaninglessness, in favor of a more nuanced understanding of the human experience. Life is not a quest for an ultimate truth or a final answer. It is a series of moments, each with its own richness, beauty, and complexity. Revolt is about embracing the richness of life, not in spite of its absurdity, but because of it. By acknowledging the absurd, we free ourselves from the constraints of conventional thinking and open ourselves to the possibility of living more authentically. We stop waiting for permission to be happy, to find purpose, or to live fully. Instead, we recognize that the power to live meaningfully is ours to seize in the present moment. In practical terms, revolt means engaging with life without the pressure of needing it to be something more. We stop waiting for some great revelation, some higher meaning to guide us. Instead, we focus on what is immediately available to us: the relationships we form, the work we do, the passions we pursue, and the experiences we have. Revolt is an ongoing choice to be present, to invest in the people and activities that bring us joy, to embrace the unknown and the uncertain without fear. It is a rejection of passivity, a refusal to wait for meaning to arrive from some external source, and a commitment to creating meaning within the framework of our own lives. This focus on the present moment is at the heart of Camus' philosophy. Life, in all its absurdity, is the only thing we have, and by embracing it fully, we take control of our own happiness. The absurd hero does not look to the past for answers, nor does he hope for a brighter future. He lives in the now, finding meaning in the act of living itself. By focusing on the present, we find that meaning is not something to be searched for outside of us, but something that emerges from the way we engage with the world. It's about savoring the fleeting beauty of the present moment, recognizing the small pleasures of life, and embracing the richness of experience without needing it to be anything other than what it is. Through revolt, we also develop a profound sense of freedom. In a world that offers no ultimate purpose or grand plan, we are liberated from the burden of expectation. We are free to live on our own terms, to create our own narrative, and to find meaning in the world as we experience it. This freedom, though, is not something we receive passively. It is something we must actively claim. It requires courage, resilience, and a willingness to live without the safety net of conventional beliefs or external validation. Revolt is the act of stepping into the unknown with confidence, knowing that the meaning of life is not something to be found, but something to be made. However, this freedom is not without its challenges. The absurd hero faces a world that often seems indifferent or even hostile to human life. The experience of meaninglessness can lead to despair and isolation, and yet it is precisely in confronting these feelings that we discover the depths of our own freedom. Camus does not sugarcoat the difficulty of living without meaning, but he offers a way to navigate this challenge. By embracing the absurd and continuing to live with passion, curiosity, and engagement. To live without meaning is to live without illusions, but it is also to live without limits. It is to accept the absurd, not as a burden, but as a liberating force that frees us to live fully, in the present and on our own terms. In essence, Camus' philosophy of revolt offers us a new way of understanding happiness and fulfillment. It is not about finding meaning in the traditional sense, nor is it about passively accepting life's absurdity. Instead, it is about actively engaging with the world, embracing its contradictions, and creating meaning in the very act of living. By rejecting the search for an ultimate purpose, we free ourselves to live more fully, to savor each moment, and to experience life with greater intensity and passion. Revolt is not a denial of life's difficulties, but an affirmation of life's possibilities. In embracing the absurd, we discover that happiness does not come from some distant goal or grand purpose. It comes from the simple, powerful act of living fully in the here and now.